Hi everyone, welcome to CRN In Depth. I'm your host, Rachel Espaillat. In this weekly series, we dive into the biggest CRN story of the week with the CRN reporter who covered that story. Now, since we're at the end of the year, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Instead, we're going to look at some of the biggest stories from the year. So I have Rick Whiting with me. He is the Feature and Special Projects Editor. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me here.
Since you do these wrap-up stories every year, how do you come up with the list of the biggest stories?
Twice a year, once mid-year, once the end of the year, we do a wrap-up of what we thought were the largest stories of the year based on their impact on the IT industry in general and the channel in particular. We do a slideshow of the top 10, and for this year, it'll be running during the week between Christmas and New Year's.
What are some of those big stories that made the list?
Number one was the ongoing supply chain disruptions and problems that plagued the IT industry and the channel throughout the year. Big companies like Cisco and Intel were impacted and made it more difficult for solution providers to get some of the products they needed to meet their customers' needs. The ongoing economic uncertainty and layoffs that hit the IT industry, particularly toward the latter part of the year. Ongoing cyber attacks and the cyber threats, as they have been in recent years, was a big story throughout the year. Early in the year, a lot of the major IT companies withdrew their businesses, shut down their businesses in Russia following that company's invasion of Ukraine. One of the ongoing stories during the year was the continued adoption of hybrid work practices. Some people thought that would end after the pandemic, but now that seems to be the way that work is done today. So that's made big changes in how IT is used and how IT is sold. There were big stories that were related to specific companies. Microsoft was making some major changes to its partner programs this year.
I know that acquisitions and mergers, they always call a lot of attention. What can you tell me about some from this year?
Broadcom's proposed acquisition of VMware for $61 billion was one of our biggest stories. In fact, just before Christmas this week, the European Commission said they're going to investigate that. So that's been an ongoing story. AMD completed its $49 billion acquisition of Xilinx. That was the biggest acquisition in the history of the semiconductor industry. Google bought cybersecurity company Mandiant, which was a big deal. In the MSP tool space, Kaseya acquired Datto, which was a big deal as well.
What other stories are going to carry over into 2023?
Right now, the economic uncertainty is as high as it's ever been, and so as we go into the new year, there's been talk of a possible recession, and so everyone's going to be kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with the economy, given the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, and whether there is or is not going to be a slowdown in the economy. The supply chain issues seem to be resolving themselves as we've got to the end of this year, but those are probably going to continue into the new year as well. There will always be new news stories, as there are every year in the IT industry and the channel.
Hopefully a lot of resolutions, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining me, Rick.
No, I appreciate it.